Hey gang, I thought I'd give you a different perspective. As you can see, I'm not standing in my garage. I'm actually, well, I'm on the roof of my garage. But I wanted to show you this. There's the Brooklyn Pony. Now I'm still missing a few pieces, like the core support, the aprons that I'm going to use. But for the most part, it's a Mustang kit. Can't wait to put this thing together. Alright, so you saw the preview, the sky shot, let's say, of the Brooklyn Pony, and this is part 5, if I remember correctly, of what will be the starting the assembly process. So, if you've seen the other videos, you know I did the disassembly of the back half, I did the disassembly of the apron, the A-pillars and the windshield frame, and basically dissected it and got the pieces that were good out of it so that I could use it on this new floor pan. So along with that, I want to tell you that this is of course a Dynacorn one-piece floor pan for the convertible. Along with that, I've got Dynacorn outer rocker panels. I've got a new firewall from Dynacorn, and I believe they make this for the coupe or the convertible. Primarily for the coupe, but for the convertible it's too wide, so I'll have to cut that down to make it fit this inner rocker panel. No big deal. That's a minor adjustment. I also have new B-pillar structures. These are 2 pieces. As you can see, maybe it's got an R there, right side. Oh look, that's a new Band-Aid I put on today. So you know, obviously that'll go somewhere in this area. We'll figure that out as we go along. Along with that, I got new inner braces, which will support that B-pillar. And these are different from side to side. I'll have to make sure which side which one is per which side. Well, there's an L, so obviously it goes to that side. So I'll get that other one over here later. I've got complete inner and outer wheel houses, again Dynacorn, and I'll be getting those in place soon. I chose to use an original tooling tail panel. I've had good experience with these, so that's what I'm going with. I trust it because they have to have a subtle curve to match the deck lid, and these fit perfect, so that's why I went with that. Everything else is from Dynacorn, and I'll say that with little air quotes because the quarter panels, the rails, fenders, everything else I've bought has Dynacorn listed on it. But from my experience, these quarter panels are not made anywhere else. Well, I'll tell you, they're made in Taiwan. I can show you. There's the R dot sticker, and where's the other one? There's another little gold sticker somewhere that has made in Taiwan on it, right here. You can see that right there. So all the black panels, I don't believe Dynacorn actually makes for themselves. I basically believe that they just put their sticker on the box and call it their own. My experience tells me this is the same panel that I've gotten before from Mustangs Unlimited or other vendors, and you know that does say Dynacorn on the boxes. I want to show you, there's like here the stuff that they make, it says Dynacorn right in the print. You know, here this is the outer rocker, and so right there in the print of the box. But here's the frame rails. You can see the boxes are similar, but actually they just put a sticker on it. And like I said, from my experience, they're just putting their sticker on. You know, there's one with their name right on the box. In my opinion, I'm saying that the black parts are the same as any other black part. Everything I've looked at, even the front fenders, I know it says has a Dynacorn sticker on it, and it does, but I've already pulled them out of the box and they look identical to the stuff I used on the blue light blue 65 that I did previously. quarters, everything. Like I'm saying, my opinion. Somebody may argue that, then they can if they want, but I just know from my experience that these panels are really no different than anything else I put on before. So that said, I'm going to get started on assembling this thing. Now, what I've done is I set the floor pan on that new Summit body cart that I bought, and I leveled it up. Basically, my intent is by having it level, I have some reference points, and there's a nice location, nice and level. And I've checked it in a variety of places. Didn't take very much. Really, I just put a couple paint sticks underneath this front section right there, and that'll just make me more comfortable with the fact that, you know, it feels more square. Even in the back, where this tail panel's sitting, nice and level. So at this point, what my plans are, I'm going to start with what I feel is the simplest thing, and it's going to be the outer rocker panels and the wheel houses basically at the same time. Now, there's really no way, in my opinion, to just throw some measurements at this thing, because the wheelhouse is going to fit basically one way. You've got certain things that are going to line up, kind of like this flange right here, you know, the fitment down in the pocket in the front here where it goes into the backside of the outer rocker. And the shape of the trunk pan opening is kind of dictates some things, and there's really, I mean, if you put it in wrong, it's not going to fit at all. But here's the thing, I'm not going to weld anything in place until I've mocked in the rocker panel, the wheelhouse, and the quarter panel, and I'll probably even have the tail panel in place. I may assemble the whole back of the car with clamps just so I know where everything is sitting, and that way there's no variables. You know, if you consider, once the rocker panel is set in place and solid, the quarter panel has to fit flush. You're not going to be able to twist it and have it fit right. Same way with the wheelhouse. You're not going to be able to have the quarter panel fit flush here and then have some crazy fitment on the wheelhouse. So just bear with me as I go through this, but that's the plan. I will be piecing it together and you know, taking my time, making measurements where I can. I did reference, as I mentioned, I may have mentioned before, I have a friend who's doing a 66 convertible as well, and his car's pretty rough. It's probably almost as rough as this one, but he's patching it up and putting it together. But the thing is, I went to look at that car, and I took a bunch of measurements. I measured, you know, a variety of things, so I knew where gaps were, or a drop distance for the B-pillar to the rocker panel, and different things. And once I get the back half of the car where I think everything's good and square, then I can weld things together. And from that point, my measurements will go forward. So when I start fitting the A-pillar, I just need to make sure my gap is correct from side to side so that the doors fit properly. Beyond that, everything else can be adjusted. You know, I can adjust the, once I get the A-pillar set up, I can adjust the firewall, get it where it needs to be so it's square. There's a variety of things, but ideally, in my mind, everything is, it's just a big puzzle, and all the pieces need to fit a certain way. Granted, there'll be some variables, but just bear with me and enjoy the ride. Alright, so as I get started on this, the first thing I'm going to do is prep these rocker panels for plug welds. Now, I know I pointed out on one of the other earlier videos that I thought maybe the rocker panels have been worked on the original car, because it had like 1 inch long edge welds. And as I looked at the other convertible today, I discovered that it had plug welds. So I'm going to go with plug welds. It only makes sense. I wouldn't see where they would have used a welder to weld the edges on the assembly line when they have spot welds right there, or spot welders. So hopefully you can see I've marked out what pattern I'm going to use, and I'm just going to start drilling those holes and get this ready to go, and then I'll go on from there. Okay, I drilled all my holes, as you can see, stayed with a pretty consistent pattern, and there were a couple of holes already existing, so the pattern's a little messed up. There's an extra hole right there and an extra hole there, and that's from the tooling. I did grind down, the ridge that you create from drilling, and knock that down, and then I went back with some weld through primer from 3M. There's the part number, and that's basically the exact same stuff that comes on these things. So at this point I'm going to mock up the rocker panel to what would be the outer rocker panel, or the inner rocker panel, let's say, especially if this was a coupe, because the coupe would not have this structure, it would have this structure. And a couple things I noticed on this panel, which again would be for a standard coupe. You see this block here with a threaded bolt hole. That would have been for the seatbelt mount on a coupe. And with this inner structure for the convertible, it's located there. So obviously they share, that panel, and that's what Dynacorn has done, and replicated that. So I'm going to start mocking that up. A couple things otherwise, I did want to point this out. Whenever I first unloaded this section of the flange right here, it was kind of rolled out, and I did dolly that back in because obviously the shape dictates the curve, or at least more of a straight edge here for the wheelhouse to fit in. And I can see this is a little out of shape. Minor things, but little things that need to be addressed. And let me see if I can get this rocker panel set in place. Now, I'm only going to temporarily set this in place while I get the wheelhouse located. So I'm just going to put a couple clamps on. Not real tight, just enough to hold it in place. Now you may wonder, is it going to matter the location of this rocker panel? Well, to some extent it does, and to some extent there can be some variance. Out here on the front, I've looked at a couple of them, and there's a gap usually here of about the width of my finger, just as a reference. So as you come to the back of the car though, I really can't go any further forward, let's say, than the inner structure here. If you look at that, there's no way that the wheelhouse can go any further forward. So if I have the rocker panel too far forward, it's going to create a gap. If I have it too far back, it's going to kick the wheelhouse back. So let me get the wheelhouse set, and we'll see what that looks like. Now it's just pushed in place, and I know I'll do some more fine tuning as I go. I can see that the rocker panel will have to go down in order to meet this flange of the inner. They're sitting, one's higher than the other obviously, so I'll have to get that down. The wheelhouse is making contact with that rolled flange right there, so again it can't go any further forward than that. And there's a gap here, which is fine. That's pretty normal because it'll get spot welded from inside here. Now, another thing I'll look at is the interaction here between these two pieces of metal, and then how this interacts. You can see right now, I just popped it up. The wheelhouse is sitting a little high. This little kick out right here, and you maybe just barely see that, has a little bit of an angle to it. That would normally be very close, the edge of that, let's say the edge of the bend, would be very close to this lip right here. So I'm going to have to do some trimming and work on the fitment a little bit more, but let me see what I can do with that. Alright, so with a little more mocking up, I can see there's a couple things that will need to be addressed. One, this flange is square, and you can see the wheelhouse has a subtle curve to it, so I'll probably reshape that so it meets that wheelhouse a little better. I know that there's a little bit of a fitment issue here. Normally the original car would have had a longer tab here that overlapped more of the wheelhouse, so I'm not sure how I'm going to address that just yet. I may end up cutting that off and making my own, I don't know. There's a fitment issue here where the wheelhouse interacts with the outer rocker panel, so I'll just trim that, and that'll let that spring forward a little bit and take care of that problem. Otherwise, it's fitting pretty decent. Like I was saying, it's catching that lip now. I don't know if you can see that, or where that slight bend is. It kind of matches up a little better. So I'm going to trim that stuff up and mock it again. Okay, so I've done a little bit more modification. I got this rolled back like I said. I did trim out around that bit there by the rocker panel, so it fits nice. And there's really nothing else I can do to move this, forward. It's already butted up tight against the inner rocker panel, and so I'm going to leave it at that. Now here's the thing: this wheelhouse, there is some adjustment. Let's say this way on an axis, and I could tweak that some, but I don't think it's going to take much. But to make sure I'm in the right location before I do any welding, I'm going to put the quarter panel on, or mock up the quarter panel, let's say. Now, I've worked with these quarter panels before, and the biggest issue is this flange right here. When you look at it, if you look down, you can see that this angles away or out, and to meet the quarter panel or the rocker panel, it actually has to be bent back that way. So I'll roll that back in and then test fit it and see how it looks. Pretty nice line. Follows the rocker panel pretty well. I can see there's a little bit of metal here, right there, that needs to be rolled up just a little bit, and that'll allow the rest of the quarter to come down just slightly. Back here, that'll squeeze together, and so let me have a look from the inside. I can't see it all, but it looks like the gap is pretty good. Sorry, the gap is pretty good all the way around. So that's going to work. All I need to do, like I said, is knock that down just a little bit and do another mock. And you can see what I was saying before about how this, this doesn't finish well right here. It should be a little bit wider. And this will come in just a little bit more whenever I get some other pieces in place. So let me do some more adjusting. and I'll mock it up again. Well, I must say I'm pretty happy with that. With a little bit of tweaking, there's almost no gap, or what would be considered a normal gap on a regular body. Everything's fitting pretty darn close up here around the edge of the wheelhouse. I don't know if I'm showing that right or not, but I'm trying. So I'm happy with that. The fitment back here, where it meets together at the wheelhouse bottom, just about dead on. A couple little things that will go away as I install is I can push up on this flange of the quarter and it'll clean up that gap, so I'm not worried about that. The thing is, at this point, what I intend to do is I'll draw a line on the back side of this inner section of the wheelhouse. I'll trace that panel, the lip that's in there, from the trunk pan, and I may even draw a line out here, a black line with a Sharpie, and that'll give me the gap that I can drill through so that I'm not guessing. That'll show me where my location is so I can drill my holes for welding. I will also, weld various places here, drill the holes. I will drill the holes here, weld those, and of course this flange where it mates here, I'll even weld it on here to this inner lip. So a variety of places I need to mark, and then I can disassemble this, get everything back in place. And again, I will mock it with the quarter on it before I do any welding. I want to make sure everything is right back in the same place. So other than that, I'm really happy with how it's looking. Alright, so as you can see, I had drawn my lines and picked up a weld pattern. This is where that flange is on the rocker panel, and these all interact with the rocker panel as well. And then I will weld here, this direction, onto the flange for the back side of the wheelhouse. It's easier to weld that because of the access. So I'll take care of that from the inside, and now all I got to do is get it back in place, reclamp it, double check my fits, and go from there. And I think that's about it. Pretty happy with it. Alright, everything's in place. I'm real happy with it still, and I'm getting ready to do some welding. Again, it fits, the quarter fits the rocker panel very well. Everything fits very nicely inside. So I'm real happy with all that. I did have a follower on my Joe Daddy's Facebook page. He asked me a question about these quarter panels, because these are really the same quarter panels that I've used on everything else. Even though it says good mark on them, it's the same panel. And the issue I had before on a couple of, well, two of the other cars for sure, I think three even, there was a problem with the length of the quarter panel. Now if you notice, it ends real nice here, and that's good. The problem is this part of it should be flush here. So that'll be addressed later. This is kind of maybe a teaser for that, but I was letting you know I'm gonna have to fix that, because the tail panel fits flush here and it overlaps the quarter back here where the taillight goes, and so something's not right. And if you look at this, even this angle is screwed up. So anyway, I'll address that later, but I'm going to start welding, and you can just watch if you like. If you'll notice, as I'm welding, I'm using my left hand to steady the end of the stinger, and it's better than having it just float around in space. So if you want to try that, you use your tip of your finger, brace your left hand, and just kind of use that as a guide. See if I can't get myself in the way. Kind of hard to get around the camera. I got most of it. Got a little bit up on that edge right there I got to hit. But anyway. I know it's kind of hard to see, but what I'm doing is I'm starting at, say, the bottom of the weld, and I'm working around in a circular motion, and then the end of it is I kind of swirl back into the center and top it off. Alright, I think you get the idea. There's a nice weld pattern. And I'll finish out doing all these. And again, these at the back side, inside of that clamp. Sorry. There. And I may even do a few just connection welds right here, like welded on the edge. Sorry, welded on the edge. Maybe in that corner, and that'll be it. So I'm going to continue with that, and I'm also going to weld on that rocker panel. Well, it feels good to make some progress. As you can see here, I've got I've got both rocker panels welded on, both wheel houses. Pretty happy with how everything's fitting. So it's a good start. And I believe the next phase will be finishing up the disassembly of that structure, which is the rain gutter and supports. That'll go obviously in the back here in this area, but I need to get that in place before I wanted to do anything with the quarter panels, because I mean, I've got the quarter panels fitting what I have. They fit fine for the most part, but I don't want to do any welding or anything until I have some of the inner structure in place. And that'll also involve that panel there, the seat riser and support assembly for the convertible top. So I'll get those cleaned up and work on getting them in the car. And when I get to that point, I'll make a video on that as well. Pretty happy with it. I hope you're enjoying this. I know I'm having fun with it. I love this sort of thing. You know, I feel like I'm building a model kit again as a kid. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. And stay tuned. I'm not sure when I'll get the next one up, but I will. And when I do, you'll know it. Once again, thanks for watching.